The Backrooms is a series I think every online horror fan has heard of. Starting out as a picture on a random web thread on 4chan of an old mid-renovation furniture store to one of the biggest series and IPs on the internet. And all of that has been spearheaded by Kane Pixels, the creator of the YouTube series The Backrooms. This entire idea of a place beyond our reality, beyond what we think is real and possible, has pulled in millions, and I am just the same. Because the series, I believe, is something everyone should watch, especially if you're a fan of mysterious, otherworldly horrors beyond our comprehension. Because this series is so well done, the animation, the visual aspects, they're just too good for YouTube. There's a reason that A24 hasn't making a movie on this stuff. So come along for the ride as I try to make some kind of sense of this amazingly shot, animated, voice, and horrifying series called The Backrooms. Found footage was released on January 7, 2022, and we open up to a group of kids making some kind of film project, shooting scenes before the cameraman.
A little more. You got it? Yeah. Whoa.
You may not know that the origins of this place actually come from an old 4chan user posting this image in 2011 to the website, and the most famous comment under this post reading, "If you're not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the backrooms." This is where it originally got its name, and no-clipping is a video game term of phasing through walls into other inaccessible areas, just like we see our cameraman do accidentally. And this to me actually makes the backrooms such a horrifying thing to think about. Imagine one day you're living your normal life, and one wrong step, 1 second of bad luck, one fall of the atom, and you're gone, disappearing from reality into somewhere foreign, which is the situation we find our cameraman in. The backrooms, like shown here, is described to be a maze of rooms stretching seemingly forever. Originally, it's supposed to have hundreds of levels, and we see glimpses of this as Kane shows many different areas throughout the series, but we'll get to that as it comes up. This yellow maze is referred to as the complex on the Backrooms wiki, and a lot of the story happens here, so get used to seeing that shade of yellow. The cameraman is justifiably frightened, and peeking around seems to be alone, but feels something stalking him. Turning around, and just for a split second, catching the glimpse of someone or something peering around the corner. After some time, he stumbles upon this crack in the wall that truly shows how unfathomably big this place really is, showing a huge long hallway that seems to stretch endlessly. Reality here seems to follow no rules, coming across a ladder that leads into a hole in the wall, leaving me with the strong question, are there other people here? Adding to the horror of this seemingly desolate place. As he walks around, he comes across more signs of life as he sees arrows drawn on the wall pointing him towards...
Okay. What the hell?
Yeah, you don't say. He seems to stumble upon drawings of eyes and a face with a window above it, almost like a child had drawn it, especially with the kid handprints all over, but it's also very odd since that drawing seems to be so high up. I presume it would be near 7 feet tall. Scribbles on the wall read out, "Don't move, stay still," before... We hear an almost robotic shriek, like if a screaming person has their voice put through a radio or robot filter cranked on high. A chase ensues, and we get glimpses of the creature that I can only presume was the one stalking the cameraman beforehand. It seems to be the shape of a towering human, but with a skinny body and huge head, looking more like a kid's stick figure drawing than anything. He is subsequently chased around the complex, looking back to only see the creatures right on his tail, while it screeches out, sending chills down my spine. He then enters the room of mirroring doorways, again seeing the monster behind him, but if we stop and look at it, we can see it actually isn't any sort of creature or animal, but looks more like the Venom symbiote without a host, seeing clear holes through its arms and legs with almost a triangular blank face. He quickly approaches a dead end with the only option is to jump down a dark hole, but honestly, he's left with no choice. Surviving the fall, he's able to get away for now, but jumping down has placed him in what looks like the basement of a house. Climbing up the stairs, he sees that the place actually has working switches where he could turn the lights on and off, but also that he is not in some house. He has actually entered a huge apartment or hotel complex surrounding an empty courtyard. The loneliness of this place gives me the creeps. It really takes me back to the times of when I was a kid walking around the hotel my family was staying at on our trips. Seeing no one in a place you know should be full of people is terrifying to say the least. I mean, look at Will Smith in I Am Legend. That man went crazy real quick. To add to the randomness of this place, there's even some rope and a real-life waste management garbage collector in a room, looking like a piece of fine art. But at this point in the video, I began to really think, what is this place? It seems to have glimpses of the real world inside of it, but nothing of actual people, or even an upkeeper taking care of the place, even though it seems nice and clean. As the cameraman continues on, he comes to this long, straight tunnel, and as he approaches, we can see that there's hundreds of these places spanning what seems like forever. I'm not sure how the cameraman gets past this, but he ends up going through what he believes is an exit door, but ends up back in the complex. And from this, we can kind of infer that this area is the main hub of the entire structure. I don't know if we can categorize it as levels just yet, but when you think about it, he jumped down a hole leading him to level 2, and coming back up seemingly placed him back to the start. But trying to make logical sense of this place is impossible with infinite looping corridors and structures so big they disappear from your eye view. This all can't be possible. Now, moving around more slowly due to the fact that he knows what lurks around the corners, we begin to hear what sounds like radio waves in the background before a chair is flung in front of him, startling him away, and he is forced to hide in a small crevice in the wall, and we finally get the full body image of the creature once again. Seeing the proportions of this creature is a little off from the first time we saw it, and it makes me kind of think, could there be more than one of these things in this place? I mean, it's not unlikely to think that, but it seems to be made out of the same kind of goo held together at the joints despite being paper thin. As he tries to escape around the corners yet again, the cameraman is faced with a decision: a deep hole or surely face death. But luckily, he doesn't have to make that choice. Going frame by frame, we can see the creature grabs the cameraman, well, now just man, and wraps around him like a jacket. And the camera seems to no-clip back out of the back room and thousands of feet above the ground. This ends the first video, but this isn't all of what this upload has to offer, because if you look in the description, we can see a date saying September 23rd, 1996, along with a link to another video. Before we venture into that link, let's first look back at the beginning of the video when the boys were filming their project. You can see a date for July 4th, 1991 on the clapboard. And hey, wait a minute, is the cameraman named Kane Pixels? Did Kane just kill himself in his own video? Anyway, the 1996 date seems to be the day the video was uploaded, 5 years later than when originally recorded. We saw the camera was still rolling and presumably intact by the end of the video. So does this mean that someone found the footage and waited 5 years to post it? Or could it be that time moves much differently in the back rooms, moving 5 years while he was in there, or possibly pulling the cameraman into the back rooms in 1991 and spitting out the camera in 96? Meaning that there's some kind of time travel element at play. But let's not take too much time dwelling and look at the linked video titled Mar 11th 90 archive.tar, which I presume stands for March 11th 1990. The video itself is unlisted and came out a day after the original found footage short film, and looking in the description again, we can see that the footage was compiled on June 1991, a month before the cameraman slipped into the complex. The video itself shows a compilation of pictures, the first one looking like early construction of the complex, almost as if this place was being built, but that would be utterly impossible with just how big it is. We're also shown an image of what I thought was some kind of computer hardware, but could possibly be a layout of the back rooms. Seeing this huge empty space on the right reminds me of the break between the walls that seem to have gone on forever, so maybe there is a way to navigate this place. Later in the video, we are shown what seems like workers of some kind of system with their faces redacted, and now a more fully formed complex room and what looks like workers observing the complex. But why? We are then shown a picture reading Null Zone 4 with very blurred text at the bottom right. Luckily, the comments were able to decipher what it apparently spelled out, reading, "Due to the elevation discrepancy between panel 225 and 224, a null KX field is created." After trying to research, I have no idea what KX field refers to, but elevation discrepancy apparently relates to the measurements of where something lies in elevation. So for example, if I'm flying a drone at say 10 meters in the air, but my reading shows something different, that is an elevation discrepancy. And this makes sense to why this is mentioned here, because like we see in the beginning of the video, the cameraman falls into the complex on flat ground, but the camera is flung out thousands of feet in the air. Also referring to only Null Zone 4 having this discrepancy could mean that certain parts of the complex are different doorways leading in and out at different points in our own reality. Basically meaning we're dealing with a huge otherworldly human-like complex that is either created by humans or at least studied by them, containing huge killer goo creatures and has a different sense of time than our own world, which can be entered at and exited at different points in our reality. Oh yeah, I live for stuff like this. The next picture shows some kind of chamber with pipes all around it, looking like something NASA would build. I'm unsure the importance of this right now, but if I had to guess, it looks like some kind of doorway. Whew, dang, and that's all on video 1. Strap in folks, we got a long ride ahead of us. The next video in the series, The Third Test, was created July 2nd, 1988. the earliest day yet, and opens with a robotic voice reading the information about a company called Async Research Facility, which is in the middle of testing a low proximity magnetic distortion system, which I have no clue what that means, but I believe it has something to do with all the machinery and doorway we saw earlier. As blueprints and still images of machines and workers pass on screen, we are told about the background of this entire experiment, and particularly how the third test, which is the title of the video we are watching now, was not released. On top of that, we also learned that this entire thing is a US government funded program, because of course the government has something to do with this. With an odd blue screen of text popping up, I can't fully understand what it's trying to say, but I can read the words are facilities to reinstate their progress. Not sure if there's more to that, but we also learned of the vice president of Async named Ivan Beck. Totally won't be an important figure going forward, who has described the purpose of this machine as focused on helping residential needs and saving money on property construction and management. With that in mind, could the connection be made that this was a program meant to house the growing population of the United States? Meaning, are the backrooms just a pocket dimension that scientists tried to create to save money on building cost and space? Or could it be a different reality altogether that the US is trying to colonize? My personal theory as of right now is that the backrooms was just a room being built to then be multiplied infinitely through different doorways like we see throughout the video. But something more has to be at play here, because that doesn't answer what those creatures inside are. The video ends showing the undisclosed test footage on June 2nd, 1998, showing the machine turning on and opening a portal to what I can only presume is the same yellow complex, just for a split second. So June 2nd, 1998 was the day that Async opened up the portal to the backrooms, but that doesn't explain why this third test in particular wasn't released. Is this not what they wanted? Jumping forward more than a full year later, episode 3, First Contact, takes place October 17th, 1989, opening up to an FBI warning, backing up the claim that yes indeed, the US government has a hand to play in this, along with the Async logo. Get used to hearing about them a lot too. Text on screen shows that this is test 6, showing more equipment at work, presumably all needed to run whatever doorway they've created, along with modification lists seemingly showing different ways that Async is changing the doorway, having detectors, monitors checking vibrations, and introducing before a screen for just a split second pops up, given a code that when reversed reads DNCH/DY equals 8000, followed by 3 failures. Looking through many comments, people have different sources of what DMCH/DY equals 8000 refers to, but all of them seem to coincide that it has something to do with particle collisions. Reading this Cornell University article on it, it seems to be the maximum amount of particles that can be created from these collisions. It's actually really cool to see that Kane is incorporating some real-world science into this series. It just gives an extra layer of reality. Since these particles release a huge amount of energy, this might be the way that they are opening the gateways into the backrooms. Even being shown what looks like the blueprints to part of the magnetic distortion system, that, if you remember, being what they refer to as the doorway. I'm not going to refer to it as the magnetic distortion system all the time for simplicity's sakes, but I feel like we're on the right track. We also get a full view of the doorway undergoing testing, showing the raw power this machine creates, making the entire room shake, before showing what seems to be a map of some sorts expanding while scientists argue in the back, finally making first contact. This episode seems to stand as the catalyst for all that is to come. The first and still only time needed to open the portal, since the machine is now destroyed. I doubt they have any way of really closing it up. But from previous videos, we know that this isn't the only gateway to the back rooms. It seems by that opening one doorway, Async, and by extension the US government, has destabilized our own reality, allowing for small pockets to open up, presumably all over the nation and possibly even the world. And the consequences of this we can actually see in a linked video in the description, titled faultline.mov, another unlisted video that Kane released alongside First Contact. The video itself opens up to a news anchor talking about an earthquake that struck the west coast of California, right in the middle of Game 3 of the 1989 World Series. And would you happen to believe that that date is October 17th, the same day Async opened the portal to the backrooms? Known as the Loma Prieta earthquake, Kane seems to hint at some kind of correlation between Async opening their portal and these earthquakes hitting Northern California, showing the destruction it caused all the way from San Francisco to Oakland, destroying bridges and hurting a lot of people, showing that the earthquake actually originated around San Jose in between Santa Cruz, along the San Andreas fault line. Could this possibly be where Async is located? Even if we don't know that, something is clear. Async is testing things that it doesn't have the power to control. If just opening the portal caused these massive earthquakes to happen, I can only imagine what the complex itself can do. And besides that, what does the US government have to say about what Async is doing? There's no way they're just gonna turn a blind eye to Async causing earthquakes, unless Async is keeping them out of the loop. But horrifyingly enough, this might be the most least worrisome thing that everyone should be focusing on. Because in the following video, Missing Persons, we are shown a compilation of missing people posters of all ages. followed by a graph showing reported missing persons cases skyrocketing in late 1989 after the 6th test. And it's clear that these missing people are a result of no clipping into the back rooms. I didn't mention that first, but the date in the description reads February 3rd, 1990, only a couple months after the opening of the gateway. What's really interesting to think about though is that you would think people would know something weird is going on. Like if your friend all of a sudden phased out of reality in front of you, as well as hundreds of other people randomly going missing nationwide at rapid rates, something has to budge. But anyway, we're once again back in the complex. This time we follow a team of Async employees exploring. The only thing guiding them back to reality is a long rope on the ground, and as they look around, they come across a corpse of someone. The only thing is that they are covered by some kind of fungus reaching all the way up the walls. It's also the same color of that skinny monster in the first video. Could those two somehow be connected? As they get closer, the Async employees seem shocked that the body's even there, before pictures of bacteria pop up with another blue screen reading, "If anybody, blame him," spelled backwards. Who him is, I'm not sure of right now, but if I had to guess, it has to be the only named person in the series thus far, Ivan Beck, the vice president of Async. But that's purely based on process of elimination for right now, unless it's that unnamed scientist who basically led the backroom's door to opening, but I doubt that. Moving on to the next one, informational video was created February 29th, 1990, only a couple weeks after the expedition team made contact with that fungus-covered body. Informational video acts as more of a trainee video that jobs will have you watch before starting. From the opening title, it seems like the team venturing in and documenting the complex are KV-31. We learn a couple minor things in this video, such as the doorway to the complex I've been referring to this entire time is actually known as the threshold to Async, as well as the many names that Async refers to the backrooms as. One I've been saying is the complex, but it's also known as the machine, the door, and hallways. The video also tells how talking about the complex is strictly prohibited. Before, for a split frame, the map that was seen being created during test 6 pops up and another blue screen with more backwards text reading, not that it would do any good, but and I can't read the rest. I'm unsure if the text is referring to information getting out not doing any good because either the government is already behind this, so you're not going to stop them, or because the complex itself is already open, so it's too late to stop. I had a theory that maybe all the blue screens are in connection, and if we read them in order, it actually all connects. If anyone, blame him. Not that it would do any good, but that's just a theory. Not a game theory. After this, the video shows how you're supposed to enter the complex, only going in groups at a minimum of 3, before switching to that day's expedition. At 11:36 a.m. we are shown the recording, and it seems that they have rebuilt the threshold, making the entryway more secured compared to when we last saw it, basically on fire. And as they walk and talk, it's hard to describe what exactly they're saying since the suit muffles their voice, but they seem to be talking about a situation that happened 2 weeks ago during their voyage, possibly referring to the corpse they had found and gathered to be further studied, which is something we will see coming up. This next part though, I have some trouble hearing what they are saying.
I mean, do you really think that there's actually a toxin in this situation? I mean, there's too many variables.
It seems he says, I mean, do you really think we would go back to a toxin in this situation? I mean, there's too many variables. I'm unsure if that's exactly what's being said, and if anyone in the comments knows better than me, it would be a huge help. But if they're saying toxin, I want to believe they're referring back to that black fungus that was surrounding the corpse, possibly showing how the complex itself might be a toxic environment. I mean, they are wearing hazmat suits, and I never mentioned in that first found footage video, the cameraman at one point does cough while walking around. I just brushed it off at the time. Maybe there's more to it than I expected. As we follow one of the workers' POV as he walks, he notices what sounds like crowd noises coming from a hallway.
Hey guys, do you hear this? Hey!
Well, that's not good. It's interesting if the backroom shifted its walls around, or if he possibly was just sent to a different time in that same place. I mean, it is the same exact corridor, just with the team no longer there. Rightfully panicked and without the rope to lead him back, he wanders aimlessly and scared as the corridors and walls begin to blend together. He then enters a huge room with stands, long shelves, and charred debris on the floor. We also hear him cough as well, making me think more and more that possibly just being in the complex is having a dangerous effect on human bodies. Pulling up on a seemingly black hole in the wall, he turns on his flashlight to reveal a completely new area with tree pattern wallpaper covering the room and a lonely axe with an assortment of wheelbarrows around. And is that a barn? What is going on? The barn itself actually doesn't look like a 3D object, but a wallpaper placed on the wall itself, like a background. We also hear what sounds like a squeaky door quietly opening. but it's really hard to tell. What that could mean, I'm really unsure, but it has to do with something with the crowd noises we heard earlier, possibly just being the sounds of the real world you can hear in the complex through null zones. As for why this place looks like a cottagecore's dream room, the theory I have for this is a little out there, but throughout the entirety of the complex and its many levels, they all have one thing in common. They are places where humans would naturally gather and be at, but there isn't any there. We have office walls and hallways, apartment/hotel complexes, and what seems to be the best attempt at creating a barn area with trees surrounding it. It's almost like the complex itself is alive and is trying to imitate what is a normal world but just can't comprehend it, making crude and weird mirror attempts. But finally, this lost crew member is able to find some kind of exit door, but something's off. It doesn't seem like the one he originally entered in with his crew, and when he walks through the doorway,
Hello? Hey!
it seems some kind of alarm is set off, but we actually can see the threshold door right there in front of him. But that front computer with the window, it more closely resembles the setup we saw in the March 11, 1990 archive video. And by looking at the blueprints drawn at the end of the video, we can actually see that the threshold is connected to that back wall, entering into this huge room, with computers at the front with lines to draw where a window is placed. And now from this room, you then enter the complex. But the thing is that March 11th video was released in the Backrooms world June 1991. Almost a year later. So could this be an actual exit but just 1 year in the future? That would back up my theory earlier that the complex time traveled the async worker into a different period when his team just wasn't at that location. And would also give reason as to why the alarms would sound, since no one should be in there at that time. If so, it seems async has learned to somewhat stabilize the entrance more, even being able to build into the complex somewhat, but what does that mean for our out of time friend? That's something we're going to find out in upcoming videos, but the series is actually going to take us back a little bit in time in Autopsy Report. Right away, we are shown the John Doe's autopsy report dated February 5th, 1990, 2 days after the body was found in the complex by the research team. We learned a little bit about the fate of the man, the scientist saying he died from malnutrition, seemingly 5 days before he was found. But what's interesting, even though he says that the body itself has severe tissue damage, it seems that the decomposing process was somehow halted. We are showing some kind of growth seemingly mutated with the fungus covering it. There's also a sticking on the side, but I just can't quite make out what it says. As he goes on, he says that tissue-wise, some parts of the body were kept perfectly intact, while others were completely taken over by the fungus, which we actually learned is a form of Hay bacillus, which isn't dangerous as the doctor describes, but for some reason, in the conditions of the complex, it seems to basically mutate it and have it attack and feed on our human bodies, making me think that the bacteria itself is keeping some parts of the body fresh while also slowly consuming it. Something else to note, remember when I mentioned that the fungus looked the same color as the monster in the first video? What if it really is the same thing, and this stick figure creature is just a huge bacteria monster, feeding on all those that fall into the back rooms? I mean, we see how it wraps around the cameraman, looking more like it was going to consume him than outright kill him. And if that's true, maybe this is the beginning stages of that monster coming into form, because the crew seems to have not come into contact with this tall figure, because they would definitely not be walking around so calmly if they knew it was lurking. The doctor then closes with asking Ivan Beck, the vice president of Async, where this body came from.
Mr. Beck, may I ask where this subject came from?
So it seems that the complex and the project itself really is kept under wraps, especially if their own autopsy team doesn't know what's happening. The video closes with a very creepy compilation that I'll just let you guys watch. Breaking down the compilation, it seems to be filled with images of bacteria, political officials, people, inventions, the universe, bombs, and volcanoes all mixed in with different things we've seen of the backrooms, the threshold, the corpse, as well as text on the screen. It's cut off, but I can somewhat read out what it's saying. And to that point, the sentiment. All serious engagements in this environment was never suited for mankind. To maintain, delusion would be to condemn. And ending on this picture of the threshold when it first opened with what I can only describe as either the sun or some kind of nuclear bomb detonating overlaid onto it. The video itself has a lot of things in it, but the overarching message that it seems to be trying to tell is that these are important events, moments in history that changed the course of the world. The sailing of Christopher Columbus, the creation of cars, space exploration, along with moments of mass destruction, nukes being dropped, volcanoes erupting, along with men in suits that oversee everything. The bacteria is of course referring to the fungus found in the backrooms, but to me honestly, it seems that the video is implying the contact that Async and the US government has made with the backrooms is an event so huge it can be compared to other world-changing moments in human history. Something so big it's lumped in with the discovery of the Americas, but so powerful and dangerous that what they have just opened could be akin to how humans created the nuclear bomb. I mean, if the video at the end truly is a bomb overlaying the threshold, then that means Async has just opened a doorway into powers so dangerous it could cause the end of the world. But who really knows? And before we move on, I want to again implore you guys to go watch these videos and the series itself in its entirety. Kane does a really good job of making this world come to life and giving it an aura of creepiness and horror that I just can't do justice. So if you do like the series from what I've explained, stop, go watch. I'll link it in the description below and I don't know, watch the whole thing, get the full experience, or just continue on from where I left and come up with your own theories. Just make sure to come back and let me know what you thought of in the comments. But if you're still here, let's move on to the next video, Motion Detected. It seems some time has passed, moving us to March 5th, 1990. The Async crews began to build out the room in front of the threshold like we saw in their blueprints. They have also set up cameras in front of the doorway and along certain diagonals so they can watch anything that might move. I don't think they're expecting the bacteria monsters, more likely just to view and record if there's actually anything in this complex. What's really interesting from this map too though, is it seems they have a good sense of the layout of at least some sections near the threshold, but most importantly, it looks like there's actually an end or an opposite side to the complex. It's funny to me that the equipment is basically just a camera on a tripod. I forgot this is in the 90s and they don't have 4K miniature cameras embedded in the walls yet. Accompanied with this, we're also shown all the footage of the motion alerts that happened that day. The first couple hours are full of normal occurrences. I mean, normal for the backrooms at least. Motion is detected when the crew walks by at the beginning and the end of their expedition, as well as movements from a supervisor and sounds of the threshold closing. But an hour after midnight, at 1 AM on March 6th, weird, almost breathing noises can be heard. As well as just an hour later, the mic apparently fails, which is weird for a US government-backed tech company. You'd think they would get some mics that don't break, but finally, we actually see some kind of movement in the far left corridor. It looks only like a shadow of tentacles moving around in the air, but there's no way to know exactly what it is, because this doesn't look like the bacteria monsters we were seeing before. But looking back at Found Footage 1, I noticed that as the cameraman was being chased by the monster, it seems that he no-clips through the walls. It's really hard to see, but rewatching it back, he just phases through the ceiling, through the wall in front of him. And for a series so interwoven and particularly fleshed out, I don't think this is a mistake. And like we see with this tentacle here, it seems to be floating and flies through the ceiling. So on top of the horrors that those creatures already bring, are you telling me they can also phase through walls? But how is that possible? Why would they be able to do that? We know the complex has null zones where people can phase in and out of it, but could it also add that property to different organic matter? We're just gonna have to keep a close eye on moments like that to see if we can get any more evidence. But for now, let's move on to Prototype. Prototype, unlike Motion Detected, is not straightforward at all. It's much different than what we are used to for the backrooms. We're shown test footage of what seems to be the first test model of the threshold, albeit on a much smaller scale, but just by seeing the power it's able to create and emit, there's no doubt in my mind we're looking at the beginning stages of the machine. It seems to be a metal ball surrounded by shooting mechanisms, which, if I had to guess, shot particles out of it. But this video also gives us a possible location of where the backrooms are, or at least another important area, and if I'm correct, the only other name we've gotten in this series besides Ivan Beck. Oak Ridge National Laboratory is a real research lab in the US, located in Tennessee right outside of Knoxville. If the prototype research took place here, then I'm sure that the threshold experiment most likely was here as well. But that kind of throws off my ideas of where it originated due to the earthquakes. So that may not be true, but something tells me this place is important too. Looking under that, we can see that the prototype was created under the supervision of a Philip R. Heyman. If this is before the creation of Async, I will throw my hand in the fire and say that this is probably either the president or the founder of Async, but we'll see how that theory unfolds. Moving on to the longest video in the series so far, Pitfalls follows Marvin E. Lee, one of the researchers going through his daily routine into the complex. Dated May 6, 1990, we see him and the rest of the KV-31 crew getting ready. Also learning the names of two of the other three researchers, being Mac and George. Async has also been ramping up their work around the threshold, making it more fortified every time we see it. As they walk through, they seem to be talking about approvals for expanding further into the complex and mapping more out. And we can see the methods they are using to ensure not getting lost, implementing ropes into the ground and markings across the floor. As they explore around, they come across this carpet-covered grid-patterned floor with what looks to be holes of bottomless pits. They decide to venture across, which is astonishing, especially since they have no harnesses. And after one ventures across to see what's through the door on the opposite side, he implores Marvin to follow him before...
Even there.
Watch it.
Whoa! Ah!
Oh my god! Marvin, do you copy?
Yeah.
Right before he falls, for a split second a blue screen again pops up reading, "While data could be inferred from these readings, nobody knew what would actually be found on the other side." I think this refers to the complex as a whole, and that no matter what technology Async uses to try and gather data, they'll truly never know what the complex has in store for them. After Marvin falls, they think of a plan to get him back, but he hears something.
What was that?
What was what?
I don't know.
I didn't hear anything up here.
Sounded like... I think there's somebody down here.
What?
I hear yelling. Like, a person is yelling.
Wait, a person?
As he continues towards this opening at the bottom of the walls, he sees an entirely different world. It looks like an entire neighborhood that was stolen from the world and plopped into the complex. The team urges him not to continue, but Marvin thinks back to those null zones we learned about earlier. He thinks there might be someone who had fallen in and needs help. This area is much more fleshed out than anything we've seen so far. It's a long cry from the attempt the complex tried to make with the barn, with full-on 3D houses now being made, even having a night sky above it. Though it's clearly just a wallpaper, but he doesn't have time to admire.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Screams and yelling of a male voice can be heard coming from one of the houses. As Marvin enters, he is greeted by a room filled with inverted turn signs before again hearing a cry for help. Going further down in the house, he seems to be put in a maze of hallways, as his signal with the rest of the crew goes fuzzy. But for this next part, I just want you guys to experience this, and I'll come back after.
What?
I think someone's been living down here.
Not living down there? That's not possible.
Hey! Can you hear me? I think I found him.
Sorry, can you repeat that? Marvin,
That's not a person.
what is that?
That is not a fucking person!
What? Marvin, talk to me. What do you see? What's going on?
This was really unnerving to watch, especially late at night. And while writing this, I'm not gonna lie, the way the monster is able to mimic human voices crying out for help, as well as its painful scream it gives out while chasing, is nightmare fuel. So right off the bat, it seems that this monster preys on other humans that have fallen into the complex through null zones, using its voice to lure others out of hiding, only to be attacked. If it acts anything like the monster we saw in the very first video, more than likely it eats or devours the people it catches, if we're following the idea that these things may be made up of human-eating bacteria. Because it might be scary to think that this thing might have at one time been a human. If these creatures really aren't bacteria monsters, I think that they are actually other people, other humans that have morphed into these things after being in the complex so long. Due to the environment the complex creates, it changes them over time, and they are only able to survive off of other victims that have fallen in. And if that's true, then maybe it makes sense why it can still scream out in a human voice, because it's all that it had left of its past self. Even if not, one thing is for sure, these monsters aren't just acting on pure instinct, they're intelligent. They understand how to lure out human prey, and oddest of all to me is the way it uses the words, "Can anybody hear us?" Not "Can anybody hear me?" It uses the word "us" specifically. I'm not sure if it means that it's attacked groups of people down here, or if it knows that humans will flock towards other groups of people. But this section was honestly so scary on my first watch through. Just on how horrifying the sound design is for this monster, this is something that any person would get the chills listening to. And as Marvin makes his way back from the hole he fell in, it's all you can hear. I'm surprised the monster isn't able to get into the room and attack him, as it might just not be agile enough to fit through the small underpass, but more importantly, we can see that Marvin begins to cough. Even with the hazmat suit he has on, the complex still seems to have some kind of health effect on him. I researched more into Haebacillus, and it seems that the bacteria itself can cause respiratory problems, leaving some with simple reactions like allergies, but can also cause things like pneumonia. And thanks to its amazing durability, it can basically survive in any environment. So if the complex itself is ramping up the way the bacteria acts, then it's completely possible it could be very harmful to humans. Marvin is able to luckily escape as the crew uses a rope to pull him up. But the main question I'm left wondering after this video is, where does Async go from here? I said before they must not have came into contact with one of these monsters yet because they walked around the complex so calmly, too unworried, but if researchers know that thing is lurking around waiting for them, how will they continue to go back out and explore again and again? Well, from the looks of the title on the next video, we may not have to wait long to find out. Report follows right after the events that took place on May 6th's research voyage and run-in with the monster. We open up on Async Labs as the audios from Marvin Encounter plays.
That is not a fucking person! Right, Marvin, talk to me. What do you see?
Closing in on the threshold door opening up, and we can see the entire crew made it back safely. But what seems like a higher up is waiting for them, who, if you had a keen eye last video, was there as Marvin was entering the threshold. We watch as multiple Async researchers seem to overlook the camera footage of Marvin's POV, all of them horrified at what exactly they are witnessing. Also, this change of style from special effects to in real life footage works so well. Actually seeing some faces to the Async names makes it feel more real, instead of just faceless entity that's up to no good. Seeing how the scientists who are working here react to the otherworldly being just makes me feel like, yes, finally someone else knows about this insane thing too. And as the in real life footage ends, we are shown different still shots of other parts of the complex and the further development they've done, going so far as to build an entire mechanical door. From my guess, that encounter spooked Async's team so much that they made further precautions that if that thing is ever seen again, it will not make it out the complex. As we are shown electrical schematics of some sort, most likely pertaining to the giant metal wall they are having built right outside the threshold. Yeah, I'm sure that thing will be the answer to all these cosmic horror problems. The next video presentation takes place only a couple days after, on the 8th of May, presenting a project called A-Space on a Projector. We're then given the Shark Tank pitch for what is alternate reality storage units. Well, it's basically what the presentation makes the complex out to be, being made most likely for the US government, as we know that Async is trying to get government backing, which we learned of if you watched the third test video. Hey, Async is located in California. Why is hell always in California? As the informational plays, a redacted section is shown describing how the low proximity magnetic distortion system, damn tongue twister, or the threshold is created. Most likely redacted because either Async doesn't want anyone else to know the method of opening the backrooms portals, because they are really sitting on a gold mine, and you'll see why in a second, or because the science behind it is so dangerous the government would probably shut it down. As the presentation continues, they seem to be marketing the complex as some type of storage for both items and people, trying to come up with a solution for very real-world problems that we face today, such as pollution storage and an ever-growing population, showing how their solution will increasingly become cheaper and cheaper to lease and maintain compared to other conventional storage units. How this is possible? Well, it seems that Async wants to utilize the complex's potential infinite space, something that any normal storage company just couldn't keep up with. But Async isn't content with just using the backrooms as storage. It looks as though Async wants to implement all kinds of living into the complex. Warehouses, restaurants, apartments, entire businesses into the backrooms, basically allowing it to be used as another world where humans can exist. We also get these weird segments of camera footage of workers walking through hallways and what seems to be like someone's POV as they are looking around Async facilities. We also get some concept art of what complex housing might look like. For the low price of $10, you too can enjoy the luxuries of complex living, with no outdoors ever and the chance to get devoured only once a month. We also get another blue screen pop-up with a backwards text, although it is partially cut off, reads to deceive the sounds like federal, i.e. the federal government, because Async as of right now, from all I've seen, just seems like another greedy business that wants money. This idea of infinite storage would make them unfathomably rich beyond a doubt, but there are things they're trying to hide, because if the government knew about corpses being found, the rise of missing people due to the complex, and the bacteria monster that feeds on these lost souls, this entire project will go down, and most likely higher ups will go to jail. Async knows all this but continues forward with their plans, and it seems that someone on the inside is trying to combat this. At least that's what I think, and that's why we keep getting these blue screen pop-ups with cryptic messages. We are then shown Department of Energy workers walking around inspecting the laboratory, seeing the complex itself and mock-ups Async has made to check their work is up to standard before greenlighting any sort of funding. But as talks are occurring, something happens. An alarm sounds off before we see this. The lost researcher in informational video is shown. So it's true that he did in fact get pushed into the future by the complex to a later time. What does this mean for Async and their funding is something we are left not knowing at this time. There's something else that's been bugging me too. During the presentation graphics, remember when we were shown this scene, a POV setting of someone looking around the Async complex? That footage intrigues me because there doesn't seem to be a DOE tag like we see on the later film. So I'm wondering, could this be something else entirely? A worker here clearly, as the person passing by, doesn't question why they are there, but then why would they be filming around the complex? Could this be the person who's writing all these cryptic texts? Well, all these questions are gonna have to wait because Async is gonna take a backseat for a little as we move on to the next video in the series, Found Footage 2, opening up to a woman finding a square spot in her garage that, unbeknownst to her, is actually a null zone into the complex. Testing it out by passing wood chips and a baseball that fall through the ground as if there's no floor. We can even see her sticking an entire ruler in there, but this seems to cause the null zone to expand and she falls through.
I feel it's like vibrating. What just happened?
Recognizing that the ruler began to vibrate right before falling. Remember, vibrations is one way that Async detects these null zones since they seem to vibrate at certain rates when they open or close. Walking around, she finds the corner of a kitchen countertop on the walls. Weird. Also, there's a very distinct change in those ceiling lights. Usually we see long, square doctor bulbs, but now they're circular and more homely. Even seeing a light switch on one of the walls that when turned on opens to tall chairs. Yeah, I'm just getting more and more confused. And as she goes on, she even enters this huge designed space with a lonely couch in the middle. And it was here at this point, I began to think that these are glimpses of the complex Async is building. Now I know that might not make any sense right now, but we know the complex isn't bound by our sense of time. It can move forward and back however it pleases. As long as you've entered something in the complex, it can move it around time however it wants. So what if these designs, the couches, the lights, the light switches, are all moments in the future brought back in time? Looking back at the first found footage video, we didn't know it at the time, but the apartment complexes, the office areas, they're just like the one Async envisioned. This is what they wanted, and it seems that they were in the process of building it out. But this area seen here is just too random. They wouldn't put in couches and corners of countertops with barely designed rooms, but the complex could be taking what's already there in the future and bringing it back in time. Just like how it took the researchers from the past forward, why couldn't it do the same thing but just backwards? As for the distorted chairs, I don't know why those are like that. It's either time traveling in those chairs have made it really distorted, or our legs grow really long in the future. Well, there was another theory I had, which is that as Async moved more things into the complex, it started to copy rooms and try to make it look as human as possible. But for that one, I'm not as concrete. As she continues to walk around, she finds this giant hole in the floor. As she passes by to a locked door, she peers through the keyhole and we can see a more modern hallway akin to those mock images that Async made for their presentation. We can also see the spread of the bacteria has multiplied across the ceiling levels of the walls. But that's not the most shocking, as when she turns a corner, we can see a crashed car smashed into a wall, revealing that null zones are starting to become so big that whole cars are able to drive through them. What's even more interesting is it looks like this part of the car is still stuck on the other side, as the front end of it just disappears into the wall. Something much scarier is that there doesn't seem to be a driver in the car. And we could see by the handprints on the doorway and the blood dragged across the floor of the housing units, whoever was driving was able to get out. As she enters a dark room, she finds, oh my god, what is this? The bacteria has seemed to have spread all across this room, but getting distracted by a painting, she fails to notice the bacteria monster right next to her.
Whoa, what the fuck? What?
And I'm wondering, did the monster devour the driver? Or did the driver become the monster? Running away, she circles back to where she first fell in. Again, coming across the hole in the ground, she decides her best chance is to go down it. But it leads to swimming pools? Must be a recreational area Async develops in the future. The monster, though, is still hot on her tracks. And that honestly is very surprising to me because like we've seen with the researchers, once they get a couple yards away from the monster, it's like they lose them. And this in my mind is just concreting more the theory that you have to have a hazmat suit on so that the monster can't know where you are. because it's easily finding this girl, as where with Marvin, it was having trouble finding him when he was standing in one place for so long. As she tries to escape the monster, she enters these thin corridors leading to a dead-end room. Seemingly, this is it. There's no way out. But then, I have no idea what that was. It looked as though the entire room was about to implode or possibly be transported somewhere else, and I think it's actually the latter. Why I believe this is due to the ending TV screen, because to see this footage playing means that the camera must have gotten out, and by byproduct, her as well. At least I hope so. So there's a good chance that she was actually teleported out of the back rooms at this moment. To where, I have no clue, but hopefully somewhere safe. To me, Found Footage 2 seems to focus a lot more on those green lit rooms. We see them all over as she's running, and especially at the end. And as the series goes on, green lighting becomes a much bigger part in the story. So just keep that in the back of your mind for now. As we move on to the next video, I remember, I think for the first time in the series, a video actually doesn't have a correlated date with it. But I think this is done on purpose, because this one in particular isn't like any of the other videos in the series. This one isn't classified as found footage, presentation informationals, or research expeditions. This entire video takes place in the mind of the lost async researcher. We see a missing poster for a James E. I would like to think that's the narrator's name. And as the narrator talks, psychedelic visuals of parts of the outside world and async labs take over. He talks metaphorically about his life represented as a house that was washed away by the sea. Many people, when you look out into the sea, it seems almost never ending. This will be a good representation for the infinite backrooms. He talks about heavily how his house or life was forgotten, just like the many other people's lives that were forgotten forever in the Yellow Sea. And as the video comes to a close, we're shown the hazmat suit of an async member saying the words, "Could there ever be anything greater than this?" That last line, I believe, is to be seen from the view of someone trapped in the endless hallways, in a complex that is so infinite it seems unmatched, unrivaled in endless power and madness. Could there ever be anything greater than this? The whole poem really seems to hint at the feeling of insanity that sets in while in the complex, being forgotten by a world that no longer exists to you as this place becomes your home. And it seems easy to lose that old life from your thoughts, and the complex reminds you of that. I haven't mentioned it before, but the backrooms and all it entails really is a product of liminal spaces. Those being places that feel familiar, almost like a memory but just forgotten. This was the original idea that spawned the Backrooms photo, a place that seems almost familiar but humanly unnatural, just like if it was somewhere you might have remembered passing by or being in for just a second. It also seems that this person remembers the life they had before and makes it apparent to say they haven't forgotten. Could this be the one who was lost in the complex during informational video? The hazmat suit at the end totally isn't a dead giveaway, but on top of that, we also don't really know how long he was wandering around before reaching the new threshold door. He could have ran back into the complex or could be under analysis at Async, and that makes me wonder, how did Async handle that situation? What did they do when one of their lead researchers disappeared out of thin air? And it's not that far-fetched to say that going through this traumatic event has him rethinking what he was once a part of and now possibly seeks to take it all down. But only time will tell as we continue on. The next video, titled Reunion, is dated May 25th, 1990, only a couple weeks after Marvin's encounter with the bacteria monster, and 3 months after the events of informational video take place. Opening up on the hills of Southern California, we watch an unnamed old man jot down in his notebook, before we are shown a coffee mug with acronyms MLML in a globe with the coordinates 364764 north and 12137.27 west written across it. Checking these coordinates, they are the exact locations for Moss Landing Marine Laboratories in California, which borders the ocean and is surrounded by mountainous views, just like the live footage sections that show up periodically throughout the series. So they must have some connection with Async Laboratories, which we know is located in the Southern California area thanks to the graphics shown in presentation. But I would not recommend going to the labs expecting to find some backroom stuff. You're just gonna scare the scientists. We then see the advancements Async has made moving more and more into the complex, now using carts to get around, almost like they imagined for their presentation video. At this point, it also really struck me that I never question how things work in the complex. It seems that as long as you have some kind of marker that is in view or that you're following, the complex doesn't seem to move around or change much. It's only when you're isolated away from anything is when you begin to be at the will of the walls. Crazily, it also seems that Async has decided the hazmat suits are no longer needed, as this lady's just walking around with no worry, just breathing in all that dangerous bacteria. We also get a first look at a rover. Most likely, since workers are no longer willing to try and deal with the possibility of becoming the monster's next lunch, this is the new way of exploring without causing any more monster run-ins. The team onboards the section we saw previously closed up in reports, ready to continue their work. I guess I never noticed too how those workers also didn't have hazmat suits on. Kinda just flew over my head they were exposing themselves in the complex like this. I always assumed this area was right where the threshold was, but I guess I was wrong. We then see the rover in action, as we hear Async workers who are directing the driver where to go. It seems even though this is much deeper than the scientists are at, they seem to know the layouts of further parts of the complex still very well. As they are conducting their search, the researchers also seem to be talking about someone else to each other.
Is that really what he said? I don't think he has a full understanding of the situation.
Oh, I doubt he does either, but I think that matters.
Possibly another coworker who has been having some difficulties at Async. I have my suspicions they're talking about the lost researcher who was found only a couple weeks ago. As he drives around, we can see the rover has reached back to the room with the holes in the ground. And oh, I guess people really still are being sent out there. Could not pay me enough money to do that. Through their conversations, it also seems that they can somehow scan the quality of the air to make sure it's not toxic. That's why workers are able to reach certain distances without having to worry about getting sick. But they stay on the side of caution, as apparently certain areas of the complex may be more toxic than the others. They refer to the floor room as 14D, and as the bacteria monsters as Marvin's friends, which is pretty funny. We also get a good look at this new suit here, and I wonder why his is different from the others. We're then shown time lapses of them boarding up the holes to create a safer walkway. We can also see the crew has brought some defenses in case anything happens. Mark mans the shotgun as the crew goes into an unmapped room 14C. They notice that the walls aren't made of the same material we're used to, as the entire environment seems to change at a line in the middle of the room, like a biome in Minecraft. But the thing is, as they walk around, they begin to see that tiles from the ceiling are missing and moved, almost as if someone or something has been rummaging in the ceiling. As they venture deeper, they come across a makeshift map of the area. But at the same time, communications begin to cut off and their signal dies out. Not wanting to be lunch meat, they decide to head back.
Well, if we do get back and they say it's just a non-issue, you just come back around, and see what the...
Oh my god! He's got my gun! He's got my gun! He's got my gun! Don't move! Never you move!
Okay.
They're attacked by a man wrestling the gun away from Mark. And even though the viewer at this point really shouldn't have any idea who this is, Marvin seems to recognize him.
Wait,
I don't know.
Peter?
Oh shit.
Marv? Marvin?
Yes, it's me. Is it really you?
It's me.
How? It's been months. We thought you...
And as they talk, it seems to be the same missing Async researcher from before. But wasn't he found when he went into the new threshold area in presentation? Maybe my theory of him running out could be correct. He might have just got too shocked and escaped back into the complex. But why is he in regular clothes? And as they continue, so many questions begin to pop through my mind. He begins to rant about how Async has covered up his disappearance and faked his death.
They took my life from me, Marv. Everyone thinks I'm fucking dead. My wife and children think I'm dead.
Can you please put down the gun?
Marvin pleads to him, but as this happens, Mark seems to get signal back to Async and starts to call for backup. So left with no choice, a decision is made.
I'm being held at gunpoint by a hostile. I repeat,
Stop! Don't shoot him!
armed support to
Stop.
13C.
Don't.
The mysterious man escapes, but not before telling Marvin to let the people know that he is alive, as we zoom in on the horrifying picture of Mark's shot body. Things just got 10 times more interesting. I have so many more questions now than I did at the beginning of the series. And that's just a testament to Kane's ability to have such a multi-layered story. The way he presents everything, it seems that all this was thought out of since the earliest video, possibly before the series even began. And some of the titles of upcoming videos leads me to believe that this isn't the last time we're going to hear about this guy. But before we get into that, we have to look at another short video titled Overflow. Again, another video without a date. An unknown narrator talks about the United States' progress of recouping Lend-Lease debt from Russia and once again opening commerce between the two powerhouses.
We're narrowing our differences, which have kept us from settling our Lend-Lease debt for 25 years.
Russia apparently taking the deal if they get some bank import credits, which I have no idea what that is. Before, a flash of light is shown, followed by a warning light indicator showing some kind of overload taking place in the machine. We then pan onto a board with papers pinned up all over it, with the green glow seen from found footage 2 covering the entire room. A map of the US can be seen above, showing what looks like what I would like to think are some significant kind of lines, converging at one point in Texas. There's also reports and writings pertaining to building and document outputs of said machine, but the most important part is the approval lines reading approved by advisor Ivan Beck, who we now know as vice president of Async, and the document is dated August 2nd, 1972, way before Async had even been established, and not even when the prototype for the Threshold was done yet. Now, taking into account the time period and the narrator's talks in the beginning of the video, I want to say that this opening speech is actually supposed to represent President Nixon addressing the public. After looking up the entire speech with surrounding timelines, I was able to find some saved old news articles that talk about a trade between the Nixon administration and the Soviets during the same year, dated July 11th, 1972. The two nations who couldn't come to an agreement on loan money that Russia needed to pay back to the US for World War II were in heated debate, especially since the times after World War II were critical for both economies, Russia more so because they took on the brunt of the war. And wouldn't you know it, the Soviets talk about wanting bank import credits, which when I looked it up is just low tariffs and import taxes on goods from the US. So this is telling us a couple of things. First off,